He is the most dangerous accountant alive. Beneath a polished suit lies a mind capable of flawless calculations and ruthless executions. Every bullet he fires lands exactly where intended, always between the eyes. But who could imagine such deadly perfection belongs to a man whose mind is imprisoned by autism? After 9 years of silence, Chris, the legendary accountant assassin, returns for one final explosive mission. Old secrets resurface, deadly killers close in, and every heartbeat brings a new betrayal. Prepare yourself, because when numbers meet bullets, survival becomes a mathematical impossibility. This man is absolutely the most skilled accountant assassin in the world. As a hitman, he possesses an extraordinary virtue. Whenever he shoots, he never misses. Every bullet he fires inevitably hits the target's head. Yet who would have imagined such a lethal individual suffers from autism? After 9 long years, the sequel to the movie The Accountant is finally here. Without further delay, let's dive straight into the story. The protagonist, Chris, is an accountant diagnosed with autism. Since childhood, he has been isolated by peers due to his condition. However, under his father's rigorous training, Chris and his younger brother Wolff developed exceptional combat skills. As an adult, Chris appears to be an ordinary accountant offering financial auditing services to businesses. In reality, he secretly handles financial matters for criminal organizations and other shady clients. Despite this, Chris donates all the money he earns to a research center dedicated to helping individuals like himself. Among his closest associates is his dedicated handler, Little Gia. Due to a debilitating illness, Little Gia cannot speak normally and communicates exclusively through computer-generated speech. Despite this limitation, Gia is a genius computer expert who provides Chris with critical technical support. The story picks up 8 years after the events of the first film. In Los Angeles, USA, the aging deputy director of the Financial Crimes Investigation Bureau, Ray, is sitting alone in a lottery center, waiting to meet someone. What Ray doesn't realize is that numerous assassins have already surrounded the building. Soon the target appears. It's a woman with short hair. The assassins immediately request instructions from their boss and receive orders to eliminate both Ray and the woman. Unaware of the danger, the woman approaches Ray directly. In fact, she herself is a professional killer who takes money to do dirty jobs. Ray invited her here today because he had a job offer for her. Ray presents a photograph showing a family that left their home country, El Salvador, 8 years ago to illegally immigrate to the United States. However, soon after arrival, the mother Edith and her child mysteriously disappeared. Now the father has asked Ray for help to find them. Ray, who is essentially semi-retired at this point, only accepts cases that hold special meaning for him. That's why he sought out this short-haired woman to assist him. Suddenly, she asks him a strange question. "Do you know what acquired savant syndrome is?" Ray, confused, responds that he doesn't know but mentions the suspicious men loitering outside. Instantly realizing the danger, Ray rushes toward the bathroom. The assassins quickly pursue him. Only upon entering does Ray discover that all windows have been sealed shut. Realizing he likely won't survive, Ray quickly hides inside a stall and writes a message on his arm. Then he boldly steps out to confront his attackers. Despite his advanced age, Ray remains agile, swiftly eliminating one assassin before stabbing another fatally with his pen. Meanwhile, the woman seizes the chance to slip out, blending into the crowd and escaping. Across the street, a sniper attempts to target her, but heavy traffic prevents him from finding a clear shot. Eventually, the woman successfully escapes. Ray, on the other hand, is less fortunate. Moments after stepping onto the street, he is killed instantly by a single bullet. Early the next morning, Ray's most trusted protege, the director of the Financial Crimes Investigation Bureau, a woman known as Black, receives the heartbreaking news of his death. She rushes desperately to the morgue, only to find her mentor's lifeless body. Overwhelmed with grief, Black notices the dying message Ray wrote on his arm. It says simply, "Go find the accountant." Without a doubt, Ray's final words refer to Chris, the accountant assassin. Meanwhile, Chris is making a conscious effort to blend into normal life. Although Chris earns a lot of money, he dislikes living in one fixed place. Instead, he bought an RV so he can wander freely. Today, on Little Gia's advice, Chris decides to attend a speed dating event. With his handsome appearance and successful businessman attire, many women at the event are eager to meet him. Yet Chris is far from ordinary. No matter what they talk about, Chris somehow manages to ruin the conversation. One woman mentions seeing a trailer in his photos. Chris bluntly replies, "Yes, that's my home." When the woman asks if he lives there permanently, Chris says yes, as long as he lives. She tries to shift topics, asking if Chris at 45 might consider having children. Chris awkwardly replies that anything is possible, instantly killing the vibe. By the end of the event, every other man has successfully found a match. Only Chris returns exactly as he arrived, alone. On the other side, Black continues investigating Ray's murder. She first visits Ray's rented apartment accompanied by the landlords. Upon entering, Black quickly discovers that Ray had been investigating a series of murders. Soon after, Black finds a business card in Ray's notebook with Chris's name scribbled on the back. Realizing the significance, Black immediately rents the place herself to continue the investigation. That night, Black calls the number on the card which connects her directly to Little Gia. For safety reasons, whenever an unfamiliar client calls, Little Gia denies knowing Chris. But Black catches Gia off guard by mentioning Ray's murder. Years earlier, Ray had risen to deputy director largely due to secret help from Chris and Little Gia. Naturally, Gia is fully aware of their relationship. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, Gia grows anxious immediately. Meanwhile, the sniper responsible for the earlier failed assassination meets his boss, Burke, the local head of a human trafficking organization. Burke is furious upon learning the details, asking incredulously how 4 professional killers couldn't eliminate one woman. The sniper attempts to calm him down, reassuring him the woman doesn't remember him. Burke then recalls an incident from several years ago. At that time, Burke was negotiating with several gang leaders when this woman suddenly burst in, killing everyone except him simply because she didn't recognize his face. However, Burke noticed a distinctive tattoo on the woman and deduced her identity. He realized she must have lost her memory, since otherwise, given the crimes he'd committed, she would have killed him countless times already. Now Burke fears she might recover her memories and return for revenge. Determined to strike first, Burke orders the sniper to try killing her again. Meanwhile, under Little Gia's guidance, Black arrives at a parking lot, noticing a damaged stone post identical to one in Ray's photos. As she examines it closely, Chris appears silently beside her. Black immediately becomes wary, having dealt with Chris before she knows firsthand just how dangerous he can be. Yet Chris calmly approaches, asking Black directly why she was searching for him. Deciding to cooperate, Black brings Chris back to Ray's apartment. Inside, countless photographs and investigative documents cover the walls. Chris swiftly scans them, instantly recognizing several victims. His attention is drawn particularly to one photograph, a young boy trapped behind barbed wire. Chris quickly pieces together scattered information, deducing this family of 3 must be key to unraveling the mystery. Observing the gang tattoo on the father's arm, Chris concludes they probably lived in Mexico before illegally entering the United States by train. The boy behind the barbed wire is likely that same child, older now. Chris then focuses on the woman in another photo. He locates child custody documents indicating the woman's name is Edith. Strangely, Edith's tax records have significant irregularities. The documents also mention Edith's father. Chris wonders if Edith truly had a father, why didn't she seek his help? Determined to uncover the truth, Black and Chris visit the factory where Edith once worked to question her boss. Chris asks why Edith willingly gave up the tax benefits she was entitled to. The boss immediately denies knowing Edith. However, Chris easily spots inconsistencies in the boss's revenue, realizing the factory's profits must include illegal income. Angered, the boss threatens Chris to keep quiet, summoning 2 thugs to intimidate them. Unfazed, Chris effortlessly takes down the thugs before quickly subduing the boss. Applying some painful interrogation tactics, Chris demands the boss reveal the source of his illegal money. Unable to withstand the pain any longer, the boss confesses reluctantly that he provides women to local pimps. Chris then aggressively asks him where exactly these women are taken. Terrified, the boss admits they use motels downtown. When Chris demands his contact's name, the boss begs for mercy, saying he doesn't know anything more. Having extracted all possible information, Chris and Black leave the factory. Although disturbed by Chris's brutal methods, Black warns him sternly not to cross the line again. Black decides to request assistance from the FBI, but Chris has a different idea and thinks of a better ally, his brother Wolff. Wolff is also currently making a living as an assassin. At that moment, Wolff is casually eating and chatting with a girl when he receives Chris's call. Chris, without exchanging pleasantries, directly asks Wolff for help. This abrupt request irritates Wolff even more. Ever since their last meeting 8 years ago, Chris hadn't even bothered to call him once, yet now suddenly wants him to get involved in a dangerous situation. Wolff finds his brother's request unbelievably inconsiderate. Still, Wolff understands how difficult it is for Chris, an autistic individual, to maintain relationships. Despite grumbling aloud, he remains secretly willing to help his brother. The girl beside Wolff, however, misunderstands the conversation and panics, thinking Wolff intends to harm her. Wolff, puzzled by her fear, complains about the difficulty of having a conversation with her. Meanwhile, Chris and Black are already waiting outside a motel. Chris casually mentions to Black how his brother often gets angry with him for no reason. Black, guessing the reason, gently advises Chris to at least thank Wolff later. Soon, Wolff arrives at the motel, but upon learning Black is the director of the Financial Crimes Investigation Bureau, he quickly pulls Chris aside, questioning whether Chris has completely lost his mind. He wonders how two criminals like themselves could risk working openly with federal agents. Yet Chris simply thanks Wolff sincerely, quickly winning him over. Wolff hands some cash to the motel receptionist, saying he wants 3 dancing girls to accompany him. They ask Black to wait outside while Chris and Wolff hide inside the room. Soon 3 women arrive as arranged. After handing them money, Wolff bluntly says he wants to meet their pimp. Hearing this, 2 of the women instantly become suspicious and leave hurriedly. The remaining girl is hesitant. Although she'd love to see her pimp punished, the money given isn't enough for her to risk her life. Wolff immediately instructs Chris to give her more cash. Satisfied, the woman calls the pimp, pretending to be in trouble, and asks for help. After finishing the call, she suddenly tells Chris and Wolff she has no children, then quickly leaves the room before they can react. Meanwhile, Black receives new information from her technical team, who retrieved surveillance footage from the lottery center where Ray was killed. The footage, however, is too crowded with people, making it impossible to distinguish clearly between the assassins and their targets. The tech team also informs Black that the man believed to be Edith's father was recently murdered. Further investigation revealed this man wasn't her real father, but a member of the human trafficking ring. It was this man who brought Edith's family illegally to America. After failing to extort more money, he killed Edith's husband. At this point, the pimp arrives at the motel intending to extort more money. Instead, Wolff immediately punches him, knocking him unconscious. Without hesitation, the brothers shove the pimp into the trunk of Black's car. Terrified, Black protests loudly, calling this kidnapping. Chris calmly contacts little Gia, instructing him to change all the traffic lights on their route to green and create false police reports as diversions. Thanks to this clever arrangement, they safely return to Ray's apartment. Black immediately focuses on reviewing the surveillance footage for clues. Chris, however, has a more efficient solution. He instructs little Gia to gather a group of gifted autistic teenagers from the research center to analyze the surveillance videos. The teens rapidly gather and filter numerous surveillance clips. Eventually, they notice an unusually calm woman amidst the chaos, a striking contrast to everyone else panicking around her. This woman, however, skillfully keeps her head down, avoiding direct exposure to the cameras. Despite her caution, the teenagers make an unexpected discovery. In another angle, they notice another woman casually taking a selfie nearby. Under little Gia's expert guidance, the teenagers coordinate seamlessly. They hack into the woman's computer, create distractions to lure her away, and gain access to her photo album. Finally, they successfully recover the crucial selfie image. After enhancing the photo, they realize in shock that the calm woman is an internationally wanted top-level assassin hunted by the FBI. Her real name remains unknown. Black is left stunned, unable to understand why Ray would involve such a dangerous individual in this investigation. She suspects all those people pictured on the wall were likely killed by this woman. Wolff casually remarks that at least 2 of them definitely weren't killed by her. Hearing this, Black immediately realizes those were Wolff's own victims. Furious, she calls the brothers insane. Black storms out to leave, but remembering the kidnapped pimp trapped in her trunk, reluctantly returns. She announces she's handing the pimp over to prosecutors. Black warns Chris and Wolff sternly that if she returns and finds them still there, she won't hesitate to arrest them. Soon afterward, Black and the prosecutor begin interrogating the pimp. They show him photographs of the dead trafficking ring member and his lawyer, reminding the pimp that both men were eliminated by their bosses. After all, in the eyes of the top leaders, everyone beneath them is disposable. The harsh reality completely breaks the pimp's resistance. Terrified, he admits he's been trafficking women into America for years. Black immediately presents the family photo, and the pimp instantly recognizes Edith. He explains Edith was sold to be a maid, but disappeared 5 years ago after a severe car accident. She was taken to the hospital and never seen again. Just as the pimp is about to reveal more critical information, Burke's sniper appears on the rooftop across the street, quickly assassinating both the pimp and his lawyer. Moments later, the sniper vanishes without leaving a trace. Chris and Wolff soon learn about this attack. Little Gia also uncovers that Edith was sent to University Hospital Center following her accident. Chris instructs Gia to search for Edith's medical records immediately. After ending the call, Chris continues pondering the strange words of the dancer at the motel. "I have no children." What exactly did she mean by that? Wolff, meanwhile, becomes restless and finally confronts Chris about their relationship. Irritated, Wolff demands to know why, after 8 years apart, Chris never even tried to find him. Wolff confesses he spent years searching desperately for Chris, yet felt completely abandoned when Chris never made any attempt to reach out. Chris, unable to articulate emotions, merely replies that it's just his nature. Wolff, understanding his brother's autism, doesn't push further, and instead suggests going to a bar to relax. At the bar, Chris notices a lively and attractive woman. Sensing Chris's attention, the woman confidently approaches, asking him to request a song. Chris awkwardly fails to respond correctly, unintentionally offending her. Wolff, frustrated by Chris's missed opportunity, complains loudly. Suddenly, the woman begins dancing energetically to the music, catching Chris's attention again. Enthralled, Chris joins her on the dance floor, imitating her movements clumsily yet endearingly. Wolff cheers happily from his seat. After the song ends, the woman smiles warmly, embracing Chris. However, an aggressive man interrupts, claiming to be her boyfriend and warning Chris to stay away. Although the woman explains they aren't together, the man refuses to back down, becoming increasingly aggressive. Wolff immediately rushes to defend Chris, throwing the troublemaker and his friends out of the bar. The brothers exit triumphantly, with Chris finally getting the woman's number. While the brothers enjoy a rare, carefree moment, Black continues her investigation tirelessly. She visits the hospital where Edith was treated after her accident. The lead doctor reveals startling information. Edith's car accident not only caused severe fractures and facial injuries, but also resulted in memory loss. Before reconstructive surgery, doctors provided Edith neurological rehabilitation therapy. During treatment, they accidentally discovered her brain injuries had awakened remarkable latent abilities. The doctor quietly explains to Black about a rare condition called acquired savant syndrome. In extremely unusual cases, severe brain trauma unlocks extraordinary cognitive potential. Edith's frontal and parietal cortexes became hyperactive, enhancing her intelligence and physical capabilities dramatically, but also making her highly aggressive. One night, Edith knocked out a security guard and escaped from the hospital, vanishing completely. Unknown to the doctor, all his confidential medical records had already been hacked. Every detail had been transmitted directly to Chris. Meanwhile, Wolff is on the phone with his employer. He suspects the short-haired woman involved in Ray's murder is also working for the same boss. When Wolff demands information about her identity, his employer refuses to disclose anything. Instead, he instructs Wolff to check his latest assassination assignment. Upon receiving the new assignment, Wolff is shocked. The target is Black herself. Wolff is deeply troubled by this and decides to temporarily suppress the information. Later that night, Chris is still fixated on the dancer's words about having no children. Suddenly, he has a revelation. Could the boy in the photograph actually be imprisoned rather than attending school? At that very moment, Chris overhears a notification on Wolff's phone. He sees the assassination order targeting Black has been reassigned to another killer. Realizing Black is in immediate danger, Chris quickly leaves to save her. Simultaneously, little Gia contacts Chris, urgently informing him that Ray was killed precisely because he had uncovered Edith's location. The short-haired woman assassin whom Ray had met at the lottery center is Edith herself. Just then, Edith silently breaks into Ray's apartment to carry out her mission to kill Black. However, Black, having received a warning from little Gia, hides and prepares to ambush Edith. Unfortunately, Black severely underestimates her opponent's abilities. Edith effortlessly breaks free and overpowers Black during the struggle. In desperation, Black grabs a knife lying on the ground, but Edith swiftly redirects it, forcing Black to stab herself deeply in the abdomen. Yet just as Edith raises her head, her eyes fall upon the family photograph on the wall. Instantly, memories buried for 8 years come flooding back violently. She finally remembers her identity as Edith, recalling vividly how her family risked everything to illegally enter the United States. Upon arrival, they were targeted by traffickers who forcefully took her child away. Burke personally branded her ankle with a tattoo as a mark and brutally executed her husband before her eyes, shattering all her hopes. Edith later found an opportunity to escape, driving recklessly through a parking lot, crashing into the stone barrier, resulting in her memory-erasing accident. At the very moment Edith's memory returns, Chris bursts into the room, gun raised. Chris simultaneously understands the meaning behind the dancer's earlier cryptic words. All the trafficked children, including Edith's son, were hidden at the trafficker's base. This devastating news completely shakes Edith, causing her to panic and flee through the back door. Chris quickly attends to Black, pressing firmly on her wound to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Burke hears news of the failed assassination and calls the leader of the assassination organization, angrily demanding Black's immediate death. Calmly, the leader reminds Burke that their contracts only expire if the target dies or if the client himself is eliminated first. Unconvinced, Burke directly orders his sniper to eliminate all potential evidence, ensuring nothing connects back to him, including the children. Burke coldly instructs the sniper not to leave a single witness alive. Meanwhile, Chris hurriedly prepares his RV, planning to drive directly to the trafficker's hideout to save the children. Wolff tries to dissuade Chris from risking his life in such a dangerous mission. Wolff argues passionately, asking Chris why he believes the child in the photo is like him, isolated and autistic. Chris stubbornly insists he senses it strongly. Frustrated, Wolff accuses Chris of constantly coming up with bizarre assumptions, yet eventually relents, understanding Chris's stubborn determination. Despite grumbling, Wolff silently gets into the passenger seat, choosing to join his brother. The next morning, little Gia and the autistic teenagers at the research center hack into a drone to survey the trafficker's hideout. They notice children being loaded onto buses next to a huge pit being dug. Little Gia instantly understands the traffickers' plan to execute everyone and hurriedly informs Chris and Wolff that time is running out. Little Gia quickly shuts down the computer, afraid the teenagers might witness violent images. Realizing the urgency, Chris and Wolff hastily inspect their weapons, preparing for battle. Before setting off, Chris unexpectedly turns to Wolff and sincerely says thank you. Deeply touched, Wolff nods warmly. Knowing there's no time to waste, they speed towards the traffickers' base, prepared to fight whatever awaits them. As Chris and Wolff rapidly approach the traffickers' base, Wolff leans out of the vehicle, firing his weapon decisively. He first uses a grenade launcher to blast an opening through the defenses, then precisely eliminates several armed guards stationed outside. The brothers accelerate straight toward the wooden entrance gate, crashing through it with unstoppable force. Enemy forces quickly respond, showering the vehicle with bullets, but find it empty. The brothers had already jumped out, taking cover behind nearby structures to counterattack. Amid the fierce gunfight, Chris notices the sniper grabbing Edith's son and attempting to escape by car. Filled with urgency, Chris becomes even more ruthless, systematically taking down enemies blocking their path. Yet the traffickers' gunfire remains intense. To gain advantage, Chris and Wolff toss smoke grenades, using the thick smoke as cover to close in on their enemies. Unexpectedly, the sniper, who had already departed, returns and takes advantage of the chaos to fire a shot directly into Wolff's chest. Luckily, the bulletproof vest saves Wolff from serious injury. Realizing the urgency, Wolff urges Chris to leave immediately to chase the escaping bus and rescue the children. Wolff bravely stays behind, holding off the enemy. Chris, without hesitation, runs toward the bus, while Wolff continues battling fiercely. Although Wolff fights skillfully, his recent injury weakens him. Soon, a powerful opponent knocks him down, preparing to finish him off. Just as Wolff prepares himself for death, Chris suddenly returns, driving a pickup truck. Chris swiftly picks up Wolff, and together they continue their desperate pursuit of the traffickers' bus. Meanwhile, the traffickers have started forcing the children toward a large pit, intending to eliminate all witnesses. Chris accelerates rapidly, arriving just moments before tragedy can unfold. Chris instructs Wolff to steady the steering wheel while he positions himself and rapidly fires, swiftly neutralizing the remaining guards. Seeing the dire situation, the sniper takes Edith's son hostage, attempting to force the brothers to surrender. However, Chris and Wolff seamlessly coordinate their movements, simultaneously firing from opposite directions. The sniper has no chance to react and is instantly killed. After successfully rescuing all the children, the brothers take the bus, driving them safely away from the traffickers' compound. On the way, Wolff even picks up a pet he had long dreamed of having. Elsewhere, little Gia contacts the leader of the assassination organization, revealing he knows all their secrets. Gia threatens him into canceling the assassination order against Black. He also reveals Burke's location directly to Edith. Shortly afterward, Burke steps out of the shower, horrified to find Edith calmly sitting on his bed. Panicked, Burke tries to flee but cannot escape his inevitable fate. Later, after recovering from her injuries, Black leads FBI agents in raiding and permanently shutting down the traffickers' factory, effectively dismantling the criminal operation. At the research center, a welcoming place has already been prepared for Edith's son, signaling the start of his new life. Meanwhile, Chris and Wolff drive away in their RV after dropping off the children. For the first time, Chris openly asks Wolff about his future plans. Wolff happily replies he booked a campsite at Chattahoochee, suggesting they go hiking together after finishing their mission. Hearing this, Chris quietly agrees, finally making Wolff feel deeply appreciated. Thus, the brothers decide to leave behind their troubled past, looking forward to beginning a new chapter of life together. Here the story concludes. The Accountant 2 narrates a new adventure of Chris, the autistic accountant assassin. However, overall, the film doesn't quite match the brilliance of the first installment. In the original movie, Chris's character had a compelling sense of contrast. He was an autistic individual, yet possessed extraordinary mathematical logic and deadly precision, appearing almost like an inhuman arbiter of justice. This unique blend created a powerful sense of alienation that made him sharply intriguing. But in the sequel, Chris begins to behave more like a normal person. Although these changes attempt to showcase his character's growth, they also diminish his fascinating aura of detachment. Chris starts to resemble a more generic action hero rather than the distinctive figure audiences initially loved. Wolff's portrayal similarly feels less compelling than in the first film. Initially, Wolff's complex relationship with Chris provided depth and tension, but in the sequel, Wolff is simplified into a character who is tough on the outside yet kind-hearted on the inside. His primary role becomes merely fighting and expressing complaints about his brother's shortcomings. The brotherly bond becomes little more than a device to move the plot forward. For instance, Wolff's self-sacrifice to save Chris appears rather formulaic, In summary, the sequel feels somewhat like a dish that uses the same ingredients as the first film, but prepared by a less skilled chef. Something subtle in the execution feels off. If you enjoy themes of brotherhood and action sequences, this film can still entertain. However, if you seek a more profound experience, the original The Accountant undoubtedly remains superior. That's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions provide the greatest encouragement. See you next time. As the smoke clears and silence returns, Chris and Wolff finally leave their violent past behind. For the first time in years, the brothers find peace not in the shadow of death, but side by side beneath an endless open sky. Chris, the assassin accountant whose life was measured in precision and isolation, finally learns that true connection cannot be calculated. Wolff, once bound by bitterness and resentment, realizes that forgiveness is the only path to freedom. Together, they drive toward a future free from bloodshed, toward a second chance neither thought possible. In the end, they discover the greatest redemption comes not from the lives you take, but from the ones you save.